June 15th. Time keeps on slipping into the future, but there's nothing we can do. It's crazy that June is already halfway gone.
You have to say it 3 times. Slipping, slipping, slipping.
Slipping into the future. That's the Eagles.
I don't think it is.
Is it? No,
Definitely not.
I haven't maintained my musical knowledge. It's gotten all
Maintained?
fragmented and weird.
Well, we got a bunch of Apple stories. They had a lot to say this week.
Apple rumors point to a 15-inch MacBook Air, 12-inch MacBook, and a 14-inch iPad Pro. This is because Apple had their event, because, hey, end of the quarter, and they're talking about the M2. And, of course, there's nothing concrete, nobody has their hands on anything yet, but, more Apple stuff.
And changes to the mobile.
Apple iOS 16 brings massive improvements to the lock screen and messages. They're still not opening up messages to Androids, so... But you can customize the lock screen very slightly, which... Why do Apple people get so excited about this? It's like, oh, Apple is giving us the ability to slightly customize our phones more than we used to be able to before. We can individually express ourselves in ways that Apple sanctions.
Well, that's not the only thing they're going to give you. They're going to give you an amazing new way to control games on your iPhone. So you'll be able to play Fortnite better than... Oh, wait.
No.
Oh,
No.
You can't play Fortnite.
iOS 16 supports Nintendo Switch Pro and Joy-Con controllers. Does this mean that Nintendo games are coming to the Apple App Store? Some sort of mad partnership? I think that there was probably a 50% chance that this was almost torpedoed internally because somebody said, well, then somebody's going to make a 3D printable iPhone adapter that will hold the Joy-Con controllers on the side with an iPhone in the middle, and we don't want the iPhone to be associated with something as cheap and crappy as 3D printed accessories.
And what if they got a NES emulator and ran that?
Which it does work with, which is what's in the article.
Also, those controllers are notoriously bad for drift.
Yeah.
They are terrible. There's got to be a better option.
Nintendo is kind of the Apple of consoles, aren't they?
And Apple is giving more and more virtual machine compatibility, which is an interesting take compared to everything else that they do.
Apple will allow Linux VMs to run Intel apps with Rosetta and macOS Ventura, the next new version that we saw previews of. This is kind of interesting, although Apple hasn't really opened up about being able to run Linux on the M1. They're okay with this. You have to create a shared directory and do some other jiggery pokery, but it will use Apple's translation layer. This also simultaneously opens the door to be able to run ARM macOS on any ARM CPU with 8.2 extensions. There's some minor compatibility issues there, but it could open the way for Hackintoshing.
I predict a lot of people will make videos about this and no one will really use it.
Yes.
Because no one cares.
Well, on Linux, you can just recompile for ARM natively. And it would be better if Apple opened up the thing so you could, have a compiler that compiles properly for their chip. But Apple's being weird about that, so.
And Apple is taking an interesting step considering that whole antitrust thing that's going on. Because this seems like they're really branching out into a whole new industry. And that's like, wait a minute. You're taking on more power? What?
Apple is turning your iPhone into a fintech service, taking on PayPal, Affirm, and more. So this is the one that I was talking about, this story and like the whole thing that Apple's doing here. Imagine, and the CNBC doesn't, they don't have any imagination. Because this is, what do we have right now with the App Store? So like you subscribe to the New York Times with the App Store, which is, the New York Times newspaper is notoriously difficult to unsubscribe from in their own native formats. But if you have it on Apple, you just turn it off, and it's off. Apple doesn't play any games, nothing happens with that. The demo that Apple showed there just stopped short of doing that for credit cards and all of your bill payments and everything else. So if you sign up for something and you say, no, I'm not going to pay that, it's going to turn off immediately, which is probably good, but that's going to make all those finance companies lose their mind.
Also, they're getting into the pay later thing. But what we're seeing from pay later is those companies are currently getting killed because no one has any money to pay later. They still buy now, but they don't pay later, which is critical. You have to do both.
The idea, I think, was to be like the weekly, like the weekly rental thing, because you buy something or you rent something that costs $100 for $50 a week for 4 weeks. And that's like crazy margins on that kind of thing. I think that's what some of the buy now pay later thing we're hoping is like you miss a few payments, but then the fees, drive you insane, then you get the lockdown and you do stuff. Apple could enforce it. Like if Apple is hooked into your finances and you do the buy now pay later, Apple's going to get their money before your rent or your food or anything else.
But then you're going to switch away from Apple.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
people aren't going to tolerate that.
but Goldman Sachs and Apple working together on their credit card, all of this is not good for individuals ultimately.
Is anything Apple's ever done good for individuals?
It's a slowly boiling thing. It's like, this is so pretty. And it's like, but you're dying on the inside. Your soul is rotting. It's so pretty. Okay.
And AAA gaming on an Apple, it's just not something that's done. No one wants this. Or maybe they do. I don't know. But it's weird that, like the most popular game in the world, Apple won't let you play. But now they want to get into AAA gaming.
Apple's new MetalFX upscaling system will compete with AMD FSR and NVIDIA DLSS, according to Ars Technica. My take on this is doomed to failure and is not going anywhere. Do you know why? Because Apple changes their mind a lot, and then the old things don't work anymore.
Which is exactly what's going to happen here, which is going to have a lot more consequences than when something on your phone stops working or something on your Mac stops working. This is a very, very stupid idea, and people will flock to it.
Yeah. Next generation Apple CarPlay will be a whole car OS. Look at all those screens and distractions.
Oh, it's so good. Plus, you can change the colors. And as you can see, all the telemetry is running through an app here. No real dials or gauges.
It'll be just like my first car with no working gauges on the dash.
Except a lot more expensive.
It's a feature, not a bug, not a horrible mechanical problem, because this car should have been junked about 100,000 miles ago.
And speaking of blurring the lines between features and bugs, it turns out that maybe after we saw that people were creeped out by the idea of having a camera on their glasses, they were even more creeped out by a easier to hide camera on the watch.
Meta has reportedly shelved its watch with a built-in camera, because that's weird. You can't video conference with your watch, like, hello.
Plus,
how's it going?
there was also a skin-facing camera, and they wanted to use that to try to tell things about your physical state.
Probably they figured out that the infrared laser sensors are better for that than a camera.
Or it's creepy and people won't buy it. I think the bodily telemetry, non-invasive bodily telemetry will be the next big,
Yeah.
like that'll be the next battle line, the front line of like, you can't do this. You can't monitor my health.
Actually, once we have a big data set with stuff like that, we're probably going to discover that the causes of things are much more obvious than we thought, which is when we have the data to back it up.
But then it'll also mean that they can immediately decide if you are taking steps to fix that or not.
Oh, you mean that your
Targeted.
insurance company will literally use the data to make you uninsurable? It's like, well, you didn't disclose that you had microplastics in your lung. This lung cancer is pre-existing. It's like, oh, what?
Not just insurance companies, like mortgage companies. Oh, I'm sorry, a 30-year? I hate to tell you this. But we've been scanning you since you've been sitting here. You ain't going to make it 30. Microsoft angered a lot of people when they came out with Windows 11, and in doing so, eliminated a lot of old hardware that it would run on. And it seems like they are following that same course. They only want their stuff running on the hottest new technology.
Microsoft is trying to kill HDD boot drives by 2023. The push for SSD everything intensifies. You know what? I'm okay with this.
Now, it's not that it's not going to work. It's that they want all the OEMs to agree not to sell Microsoft.
I know a Fortune 500 that's still buying like their standard class info drone workstation. Still, they're buying mechanical hard drives, and there is something seriously wrong with them. Like they're really stupid. Really stupid.
And unions are becoming more and more of a thing. And I think as the economy crumbles, we'll see more of that. It'll be a more popular thing. And especially with the likes of Elon Musk running around saying crazy stuff. So Microsoft is saying, well, we see a trend here. How can we get on their good side?
Microsoft tries collaborating with unions to avoid quote unquote public disputes. This is an interesting approach. Microsoft basically concedes, yeah, okay, making software is basically like a license to print money. How can we all benefit from this?
But if you let them in at this point, they will for sure try to take control, as all the big companies will attempt to do. How long do you think before Amazon accepts the reality and switches to that tactic?
I don't know. Apple is so sociopathic with all like they're structured sociopathically, so I don't know that they would ever be willing to accept something like that.
Can anybody get to one of these positions without being a sociopath? I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless it's nepotism, and that might be worse. And Microsoft, it seems, is softening on a lot of its stances. Again, I've got to think this has to do with the labor market and them sort of reading the tea leaves and being like, yeah, things are going to change and let's try to get in front of it.
Microsoft no longer will ban staff from seeking roles at competitors and plans to disclose salaries on job ads. This is, of course, after giving everybody emergency raises, or so they were telling the press.
Does not apply to upper level management. So if you are high up if you're one of those sociopaths, you do still have to do the non-compete.
Isn't the inflation for last month, didn't the numbers for that just come out and it was like 8%?
It went up 1% in 1 month. 1% more inflation.
That's crazy.
That's a lot.
If it does that every month, that's going to compound by the end of the year and just be even more bananas.
Here's what you compare it with. The Fed's target, 2% per annum. That's 50% of our per annum in 12% or 1/12 of our year.
Ralph, I'm in danger.
My funds are in danger, and then I'm in danger from food riots. And if you were in Russia, you are in danger of losing your Microsoft account.
Microsoft winds down its business in Russia and has laid off more than 400 people. Microsoft is the latest company to sever. Doesn't look like that's going to wind down anytime soon, which is surprising. Maybe it'll be a sudden collapse and everything will go back to.
This is off topic, but it seems like what we're seeing now, all of a sudden, because Ukraine was all of a sudden like, oh yeah, we weren't telling you guys before, but we're dying like flies. So a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, are you going to have to surrender? We were told that you were doing so well. That's the problem with propaganda. But no more Microsoft over there. And pi, it's like, the nerd game. Who can calculate pi to the highest precision? I think Google has a strong lead here.
Google developer Emma Haruka Iwao has calculated pi to 100 trillion digits. Oh yeah, Dr. Cuttress is always working on this kind of thing. Took 158 days to perform the calculation using spare capacity in Google's compute cloud. So
it was really an advertisement for the cloud.
Yeah, it's more storage than compute limited, as it turns out.
The 100 trillionth digit of pi? 0. A fitting digit. If it had been 6, we'd all been sad. We reported on Grubhub, they had this amazing deal, and they didn't really think it through. They said, hey, during this lunchtime on one day in New York City, we're going to give you incredible discounts just to get you in here, just to show you how good Grubhub is. It was overwhelmingly used, so much so that no restaurant could keep up. They were getting 6,000 orders per minute, some of them. So what happens next?
Grubhub reportedly still owes New York City restaurants thousands of dollars after a disastrous free lunch promo. Plus, a food truck festival rolls into the Marine Park this weekend.
This is paywall alternative.
And more intel.
NewYorkEater.com was not the original news story here. It was on Bloomberg. But so no one came for those orders. The restaurants made them. They had them waiting in some cases. No one came.
Your first experience with Grubhub is like, we're going to get you free food that just never showed up.
So the people got their money back, but the restaurant still threw away a massive amount of food. So Grubhub has said they're going to pay them back. They have not yet done it. And another story that we need Krista for, because Krista, she's the big Blizzard proponent. It's a tough thing to defend, but I don't know if she tries to defend it. She just keeps using it. However, their latest defense is one of the worst ever.
Diablo Immortal now has Blizzard's lowest ever user score on Metacritic. It's the third Blizzard game in as many years to get a user score lower than 1.0. It's almost like they've got all the money and they've no idea how to make a game that people want to play.
Although they've called it a success because they don't need most of you to like it. They just need the people with serious addictions to this kind of thing to really like it.
It's like, oh, I don't really want to launch the rocket in Factorio, but I have to launch the rocket in Factorio.
Oh, did you manage to do that yet?
I did, yeah.
Oh, wow. Did you get, how much endorphin did you get from that? Did you get a big hit?
No, it really was much less than I expected.
It's the journey, not the destination.
I managed to launch it with the satellite too, so that was that took a bunch of extra resources.
What did you get for that?
1,000 white science. So the way that you get white science is you keep launching rockets. So all of that nonsense, you have to build automation for that. And then see, the last time we played Factorio, there was no white science. There wasn't even yellow or purple science. Well, the purple science came from killing the aliens. But yeah, so if you want white science, you have to continually launch rockets. You don't just launch one rocket, you launch a ton of rockets with satellites on board. So you're going to be moving all over the map to get resources because all of everything's depleted.
Well, as much as that exploits certain mental disabilities, it does so for one price, and it does so in a very rewarding fashion.
Yeah,
you can't really argue. I mean, you got some good times out of Factorio.
I actually really enjoyed the nuclear power. I wish we'd done it sooner because once I got the nuclear grid up and running, it was like 81 megawatts. So all of the power problems went away, and it's less pollution.
Now imagine that every time you put a new belt or inserter down, you could pay a nickel to make them better. Oh, we already did that.
We did this one. Yeah. He's making the comparison to Diablo Immortal. So
yeah. I've not seen any gameplay of it, but it sounds horrible. Also, this is one of the biggest. All the reviewers gave it good scores, which tells you something about the reviewers.
Well, that's why they didn't send us one. We'll happily tell you that it sucks.
And I'll happily tell you that this sucks. I've never used it, don't know anything about it, but I'll tell you it sucks.
Salesforce takes crypto plunge with the new NFT cloud. That's all you need to know. Salesforce, fortune number one. Woo! Not really, but
I don't know what made them think that they are equipped to do this. But what would you say the over-under is for a massive theft from that cloud service?
I think we'll be reporting on that within a year, probably within 6 months.
Now I'd say lower than a year for sure. Ooh, crypto taking a hit today. Look at that.
Ooh,
poor little Ethereum. And that is, it's something to this story because PayPal has recently gotten into it. And I guess one of the big things about it, one of the big problems with the PayPal service is you couldn't take your crypto out of it. You can only send it to other people.
PayPal lets users transfer Bitcoin and Ethereum to external wallets now, finally, after the long demanded feature let users move crypto to their external wallets and hardware devices. They just had to make sure that they had the ledger in place to automatically send your identity and the place you sent your crypto to the feds. That's all. They had to make sure that was in place, and then everything's okay.
And LexisNexis.
And LexisNexis, yeah.
Now here's a little bit of a, on the edge tech story. It's not inherently tech related, although I mean, it kind of is these days, but fintech, as we've said, and of course, the game stonks, because the game stonks are probably what led to this. This has to do with payment to order flow. And if you're a Robinhood investor, ooh, I'd get out.
Wall Street's top cop proposes massive changes to the stock market. The massive changes is that selling order flow, that's not okay. Which is what Robinhood does.
Which is like the business model of Robinhood and Citadel.
I like the quote from Robinhood's CEO. He's like, I don't know. I mean, we're fine. Probably. We need to take a look at it when it's released. And it's like, are you fine? Are you really? I don't think so.
It is a good law.
Yeah.
Because high frequency trading preys on that. If that happens and they actually do it right, I don't know if there's loopholes or not. High frequency trading will no longer be able to affect the stock market the way that it does right now.
Also, it's been awesome to watch them do the direct register stock thing, taking all of the stock away from brokerages. That's amazing.
There was another headline, I didn't add it, but a lot of the HFT places are now suddenly getting into crypto because they need a market where they can still get order flow and jump in front and scalp those orders.
Yeah.
Well, Team Executor, they built a very robust Switch mod chip, non-invasive, ran on software. It was great. Nintendo, it took them a while, but they got him. And they arrested him, and they had this big case against him. And it seems like Nintendo's lawyers and the judge were sort of like colluding here.
Yeah.
That's not how that system is supposed to operate.
Nintendo wanted hackers' prison sentence to turn heads. So some memos and some other things have leaked that maybe makes it seem like the lawyer and the judge were saying, yeah, we should do this to set an example. But that's not how this is supposed to work. Justice is supposed to be blind. Do you think maybe the judge was invested in Nintendo? This happened with Disney too. It's like, oh, the judge has invested heavily in Disney and he found heavily in Disney's favor. Nintendo is not like, when you, I don't know. Nintendo is not behaving in any way that makes me think that they're appropriate stewards of our collective shared culture. They're in it to make money. And that takes away from the wonder of what they're able to produce in terms of entertainment.
Is it our culture, though? I mean, they did create it.
I mean,
shouldn't we just abandon their culture and create our own?
Yeah.
Isn't that the answer?
I mean, I have to say that I have gotten a lot more, like, as time goes on, the more games that I play, like Dwarf Fortress and blah, blah, blah.
Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, the more...
RimWorld.
Yeah, RimWorld. Yeah, RimWorld is a great example. It's a
Factorio.
It's a relatively uncomplicated mechanic, but it is great storytelling and it's a great adventure. It's and it's different. It's very different than and it's somehow there's more human connection there and less manufactured pushing endorphin buttons, which seems like that's better.
Like in comparison to Breath of the Wild, for example. An amazing game.
Yeah,
but it doesn't have that.
Yeah. Can you imagine Breath of the Wild, but the mechanic and the idea of something like Dwarf Fortress or NetHack or...
No, actually, I can't imagine that. That's just too much of a conflict in my head. I must have forgot to put the paywall alternative on here. Business Insider is such an annoying paywall. And there's not really, I don't know a lot of details here. It's just another major merger, which probably is going to be bad for us.
Roku employees are talking about a possible acquisition by Netflix. So this is great because this is a thing that we can point to and we'll have a real concrete prediction. If Netflix acquires Roku, that looks good on paper and it looks good to shareholders and it really shores up the subscribers that Netflix is hemorrhaging. But I don't think it's actually good for Netflix on paper. Netflix doesn't need to be tied to devices. They don't need a physical device distribution medium. Roku needs Netflix more than Netflix needs Roku.
And we have a lot of Roku TVs out there. Those are very popular. Does Netflix then hobble other streaming services as it updates those operating systems?
Even if they don't hobble other streaming services, I think Netflix is thinking we will offer people the ability to like one-click subscribe to Netflix from this device. And that's how we'll, improve our share numbers or our subscriber numbers. And I don't see it happening.
But here's another thing to consider. Here's a playbook out of the satellite radio book. When we sell these TVs, we will give you a 1-year Netflix subscription for free, which we will bake into the price of the television. And then we will count you as a subscriber.
Yeah.
And our numbers will look a lot better.
Yeah. That kind of thing I think is exactly what Netflix has in mind. And it is 100% a move to make things look better for shareholders, but doesn't actually make the company more healthy.
Well, does having employees in the building make a company more healthy? A lot of people are saying yes, Elon Musk being the vanguard there.
That was really a stealth layoff. I don't think he cares.
Oh, I think he cares big time. But a lot of the other people, being those workers that we're talking about, are saying, I don't think so.
The idea of working in the office all day, every day, no thanks, say workers.
So we had the story about the Google engineer last week, and he was like, oh, I'm really good at AI, and you really need me? So no, I don't think I will do that. And they're like, oh, it turns out there's an exception for AI engineers. Who knew?
I'm going to work from my balcony, and here's how productive I am. Good luck. Like, yeah. I mean, if you're productive and you can get your stuff done and you can stay on top of things, that's great. Not everybody can do that.
One of the things that we've learned from doing all these news stories that I don't think I would have ever been exposed to otherwise is the juggernaut that is Roblox.
Yeah.
Roblox is huge. And now that I know about it, when I'm in line and I'm looking at the gift card
Yeah.
center, it's like, oh my God, it's all Roblox.
Yeah.
Like this whole section is Roblox and 5 of them are sold out. It's huge. And you can tell that Mark Zuckerberg is looking at that as like, I want that. Do you think he's made an offer and they turned him down?
Yes, absolutely.
Wasn't somebody trying to buy
Yes.
it?
Several people have been trying to buy them.
It's a golden goose. You don't let that go for cheap. So what do?
Facebook's gaming brings Crayta's user-generated games to its cloud platform. The Roblox meets Fortnite platform lets you build games with friends. So the idea here is that you can channel the world-building infinite well of energy that is in your Minecraft playing 12-year-old and turn that into something that other people can then experience. So if you've got, a million monkeys on a million typewriters, eventually one of them is going to turn out Shakespeare. That's kind of what's happening with 12-year-olds and the make your own game. So it's like, look at this game that I made. Let's all go play it. They'll come up with an interesting mechanic, blah, blah, blah. Facebook doesn't care. They're there to just make money. But also, you get a better experience because you're not experiencing that Nintendo sort of Breath of the Wild, whatever. You're experiencing, one 12-year-old is putting together a game that they can share with other 12-year-olds, and then it doesn't matter that there's a million different games and a million different mechanics. They're making money upwards, downwards, sideways, and diagonally.
And another thing we learned from Roblox is, in amongst all this, scandal about how much money Apple is taking and how much money Google is taking, Roblox is taking nearly all the money.
Yeah.
Not giving you much of anything back.
Yeah.
Now, as I understand it, Crayta is already on the Epic Store. But Facebook's big innovation is they're going to put it in the browser. Yeah. You don't need the standalone installer anymore.
Which also solves their Apple problem. They're looking at what happened with Epic and Fortnite, and it's like,
Now, we learned that Google had the new Pixel phones, and one of them, watch out, it leaked. That was probably PR. And I wonder if this is just not a continuation of the PR.
50% chance. Someone says they bought a Pixel 7 Pro prototype on Facebook Marketplace. You just never know what you'll find. And that's because the Pixel 6 was such a train wreck disaster garbage fest.
Now, this was sold as a Pixel 6 with no box, but it is definitely not a Pixel 6. It is a Pixel 7.
It's probably a Pixel 6 and a new. It really astonishes me that Google has become so disconnected that they just, like the other day I was doing something and like copy paste doesn't work sometimes. Like depending on how you highlight things, it's like you'd never want to copy that to the clipboard. Well, yeah, I do actually.
Well, moving to social media, and of course the biggest story in social media for certainly this month and probably some months coming is Elon Musk and his acquisition of Twitter. Now he did, we're going to compile a couple of stories because they get a story out of this every 2 days, if not every day. But he said, I don't know, I feel like I'm going to use the exit clause because you're not giving me what I want. And they were like, well, okay, you know what? We will give you what I want. But they're using a very nasty court tactic, which is to overwhelm you with information. Like if you ever see a court case where they're just stacking box after box after box because it's like, oh, you want discovery? Take it all. Spend 5 years going through it. Yeah. But I think Musk probably has the infrastructure to go ahead and do this. I think he'll be able to figure it out.
In reversal, Twitter plans to comply with Musk's demands for data. They're in a bit of a battle here. So it's Musk wants the data to know the rate at which bots and bot activity happen on Twitter. And it's possible that he'll discover something that Twitter doesn't know. It's possible. Not likely. They probably know.
Now, they're going to give him the same level of telemetry and access that they give to the people who pay big money to them in order to get that to run their businesses on it.
Yep.
So, not going to give it to him forever, obviously, but presumably this gives him the ability to learn. You think that's right down to the bare numbers, or do they still massage that a little bit?
Well, they probably still massage it a little bit. It's like, here are the bots that we allow because they give us a lot of money. Here are the unpaid bots. Here's the third-party bots that we're keeping an eye on that do stuff, but we really just squelch all the stuff so that they're only talking to bots.
And of course, we live in a world where there is no subjective truth, right? I mean, or objective truth. There's just what Elon Musk says and what Agarwal says. And we have no way to confirm it or prove it or anything. You have to choose your side. and the Texas Attorney General has chosen a side.
Ken Paxton to investigate whether Twitter is understating the number of fake accounts on the platform. I guess the Texas Attorney General should look into this rather than, one of the people that deals with shareholders. Okay, I guess, maybe, possibly.
Twitter's not based in Texas. They do operate in Texas. I guess that gives you some power over that.
It's just weird.
Could this just be an election year thing?
Why is so much effort wasted on nonsense?
Because Twitter has an amazing amount of power, sadly. And so do attorney generals. But it seems, and this is a real head scratcher, that Twitter is not willing to play ball with government in some cases. And again, this is really weird because it seems like Twitter and the powers that be would be on the same side here. So what is it that Twitter is hiding in this situation? You got to wonder. Twitter would love to get rid of Donald Trump, right? They did. They have publicly bashed Donald Trump. So why would you do something that might protect him? I think it's to keep from incriminating yourself.
Twitter is refusing to hand over its internal Slack messages to the January 6th House Committee, the report says. You dig into this, though, and it may be that they turned over what they had to the lawyers, and the lawyers are like, I don't know if we should give them this. So,
but why?
Yeah, and so it's like, that's interesting.
I would like to read that. I think most of America would. And finally, TikTok. TikTok, of course, their big bone of contention, especially with governments around the world, is that their product might be just a smidge addictive, especially for kids. Seems like it's almost tailored to take advantage of the child's mind. So what do you do if you've got those accusations coming against you? You add more to the addiction.
Amid growing concerns around app addiction, TikTok rolls out more screen tools. So scroll down, you got to see the little thing. Let's get the weird art style that we should ask Krista
the
about.
Memphis. I hate it.
Yeah.
Don't you hate it?
Well, it's like, before you use TikTok, what do you want to get out of using TikTok? Be mindful of that. And then it's like, when you're using TikTok, be mindful of how much time. And then when you're done using TikTok, think about what you got out of it. Does it make sense? And then you can use the screen time thing to be like, you can only do this in 15-minute increments. And then you get a pop-up that's like, oh, you've hit your limit. I guess.
The answer to those three questions would be, number one, I'm trying to forget reality because reality is horrific and the world is spiraling downward. And then the number two, what was the number two question? During I'm using it, I'm only thinking about the cat videos. It's like, oh, look at the cats.
They're experiencing a level of joy that I will never be able.
And after, I'm thinking, oh, my problems are still here. They didn't go anywhere.
But I can think about the joy that the cats experienced and live vicariously.
And then I think, all right, let's go back to the cats. And that's the TikTok loop.
Well, that's it for today. We'll get a lot of nonsense coming up on Friday.
And robot in space.
And a sneeze.
That won't be on Friday. Well, maybe we'll have another one. Only one way to find out.
Tune in.